What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, Cbs Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host, and we are going to do some defensive back rankings in this episode. We are wrapping up our full positional breakdown for the entire draft. If you look in the feed, running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks. This is Thursday, by the way. Tomorrow's show will be the mailbag. Defensive linemen, edge, linebackers. I'm sure I'm missing something else. Offensive lineman, every position, we break it all down. And again, mailbag tomorrow. If you have a question, you can leave a 5-star review. Here's a question for you. What does a World Series winning executive do after running a Major League Baseball team for 18 years? He starts a podcast. That's what he does. David Sampson hosts Nothing Personal with David Sampson, a daily podcast dedicated to giving you the truth about sports, business, and entertainment. Step inside the front office and really get to know sports. Nothing Personal with David Sampson is available every weekday wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, it's just business. Nothing personal. It is personal. We bring Josh Edwards on to talk about the draft because we love talking to Josh. And what's up, dude? How you doing? Long time no talk.
Long time no talk. We are a week away from the NFL draft. Things are finally winding down. And as everybody was hoping for, unfortunately, you didn't get Bryant McFadden on the defensive back breakdown. You got me instead. So
no, don't say that.
Excited to go through this list. I'm sure I'll provide a little bit of Bryant McFadden flavor here at the top of the list.
All right, let's get into it. The defensive back list is crazy, by the way, because once again, for the second straight year, you're just being haunted by the reminder of how dirt old we are. Maybe not you, at least how dirt old I am, because we have multiple guys on this list whose parents played in the NFL. Patrick Surtain, Jaycee Horn, and Asante Samuel. What a backbreaking and painful realization for me. Speaking of Samuel, Asante Samuel, he's actually at Pick Six something on Twitter. So maybe we should. He's really our patron saint of, although I guess it could be Ed Reed. Maybe it's Ed Reed. Anyway, Asante Samuel, loved him as a player. Very much enjoy his son as well, but he is your 10th ranked defensive back in this class.
Yeah, so I said, bring a little BMAC flavor to the podcast, obviously starting with a Seminole, but I believe he was on All Things Covered as well with BMAC and Patrick Peterson. Father played 11 seasons in the NFL with the Patriots, Eagles, and Falcons. He does a great job of getting his eyes back to the quarterback, has a great understanding of route distribution, just like his father did. I mean, he's a little bit undersized, but he plays bigger than what he's listed, and he was involved in 6 turnover-worthy plays in 2020. So a guy that finds him around the football quite a bit and is capable of turning over the football for your defense.
All right. I mean, if he's anything like his dad, he's going to be a friggin' ball hawk like crazy. Tell me about his teammate from Florida State. You're ninth. I can't do it. Just tell me how do I pronounce his name? And why don't I know this guy? Played at Florida State.
That is Hamza Nasiril.
That's actually easy.
It's not too bad if you say it phonetically, but really smooth transition there from Samuel to Nasiril. Long player. We talked on the linebacker podcast a little bit about the positional flexibility, and that's Nasiril. I mean, he has the ability to be one of those big nickel kind of players where he might be listed as a safety, but capable of making plays in the box as well. And there's more emphasis on that today than ever before. So a guy that can impact the passing lanes, but also come down into the box and make some plays in run support.
All right. I dig it. Up next on the list, Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky. Man, Kentucky, I mean, I saw Florida State and Kentucky up close just because NC State played them both this season. Kentucky in the bowl game, a little shorthanded. Kentucky's defense is a lot better than Florida State's defense.
Yeah, with a little bit less talent as well, and in terms of recruiting rankings,
for sure,
much less ballyhooed is Florida State. But Kelvin Joseph is a former top 100 high school recruit himself. Initially committed to LSU and decided to transfer to Lexington after his true freshman season. A guy that's had 4 interceptions this past year, including one off of Mac Jones. And he was responsible for one of the best plays that I saw from any cornerback this past year. He's sitting in zone. Devontae Smith comes around on a play up the boundary, and Joseph falls back. He starts using his body as leverage, keeping a hold of Devontae, kind of boxing him out like he's a rebounder in basketball, and then went up and got the football and returned it for 20, 30 yards. So one of the better plays that I saw from any cornerbacks in this draft class. A guy that, I know some people question, his interests off the field. If he might be interested, because I think he works in the rap game and some stuff like that. So I think he's got some other interests. So teams are kind of deciphering how much he loves the game of football. But this guy is one of the most talented cornerback prospects in this entire draft class. I'm thinking he's probably going to go into round 2 somewhere. I've seen him in some first round projections, but I think round 2 is probably the sweet spot. A guy that, can be one of those lockdown cornerbacks for you in the NFL. So I think essentially any team would be a good fit for him, depending on, culture fit and stuff like that. But a guy that has tremendous boundary lockdown skill set. So he's got a wide array of teams that could possibly be interested in the second round.
Tyson Campbell, number 7 on your defensive back list out of Georgia. There's a lot of SEC and ACC. I don't know. It just feels like a lot of Power 5 representation in this cornerback list.
Yeah, Tyson Campbell was higher on this list for me, maybe even a month ago, but I had to kind of reconcile his lack of ball production in the sense that he is great at staying in phase, but when it comes to locating the football and making a play on the ball, it gets a little bit spotty. So, typically those kind of players are, not going to be your all pro, Pro Bowl kind of guys where you're getting the recognition because you don't have the interceptions and statistics to show for it. But really great cover corner. He's just got to finish the deal. I mean, he's got to get his hand on more footballs. So I'm thinking late day 2, early day 3 for Tyson Campbell, or late round 2, early round 3. And I look at the 49ers, the Buccaneers, the Chiefs as possible teams of interest because you're looking at a team that already has a good pass rush that you can just kind of plug him in, not worry so much about him staying and, making a play down the field because he's going to be able to stay in phase and take the wide receiver out of the game. So you're looking for those teams with good pass rushers that are going to make the quarterback get the ball out quickly.
I'll throw Minnesota's hat into the ring there too. Maybe they go offensive lineman or edge rusher in the first round, and then in the second or third round, circle back to grab a guy like that because, it sounds like to me, if somebody can play pretty well as a press man corner, but needs to develop ball skills, that's Mike Zimmer, man. And he won't have to start day 1 because they have Jeff Gladney, they have Patrick Peterson. They signed or they brought back Mackenzie Alexander and also have Cameron Dantzler to cover. So like their depth is pretty good there again. Just as a fit, but I think you're right. There's teams with the pass rush where he doesn't have to be primarily responsible for the full workload back there. Could make a lot of sense. Aaron Robinson out of UCF, your number 6 defensive back.
Yeah, so he's played a lot more in the field than he has the boundary. So if you're looking more for the outside, true, lockdown cornerback, Robinson's probably not near the top of your board. I do think he has the skill set to translate. I think he's got great speed. He's got great size. And I think he can contribute as a boundary cornerback in the NFL. That's obviously a little bit more of a projection, something that, teams that have personnel guys way smarter than me are going to have to parse out and determine if that's a true avenue that he could possibly take. But similar to Nasiril in the sense that he brings a little bit more of a versatile skill set. He kind of like a Troy Hill kind of guy where you might be able to play in the boundary. You might be able to play on the field as well. He offers you that ability. So I look at him as a round 2, possibly early round 3 kind of guy. And I look at Seattle, Washington, and Las Vegas as possibly teams of interest, teams that, are going to play a little bit more zone and allow him to use his length.
Good stuff. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll dive into the top 5 defensive backs on Josh's list. bit of a surprise here. Number 5, a guy I thought I have an under on at 13.5, and a guy I thought about splashing on at 2-1. The first cornerback to be taken in the draft. Certainly not the case for you, I wouldn't think. Jaycee Horn out of South Carolina.
Yeah, I still think the ticket that you hold is probably good value. I think there's a lot of teams that could potentially take him in that range. Physical cornerback, great size. Father was Joe Horn, who played wide receiver in the NFL for 12 seasons with the Chiefs, the Saints, and the Falcons. My issue with Horn is that he gets a little bit handsy in his routes downfield, and depending on how that's going to be officiated, which is pretty tightly as we've seen in the past, I think that's potentially my only issue with him. He can do a better job of getting his eyes back to the ball, but that's really it. I mean, I love his game. If anything, I probably screwed up by not owning this more because, again, like I've said previously, I had him as a first-round pick back in May of last year. A guy that, I saw the potential, the length, and his aggressive play. Like, I thought that translated to the first round, but I just feel a little bit more comfortable taking some of these guys over him. With that said,
so in other words, you were on him earlier than a lot of people, but didn't pound the table for him.
And then I gave up my seat. I gave up my seat on the bus. So I still like him a lot, but
that's what I did.
I should have carried the flag.
That's what I did with Jordan Spieth in golf. I was like on Spieth early, and then I got off of him, and then he won the Masters, and I didn't win. So I decided I'm just out on Spieth. I think it's very easy to do that.
Yeah.
Where you're an early adopter, and then you feel burnt because you weren't leading the hype train. So you're like, nah, that's it. I'm out. He's handsy. Joe Horn's son. Big red flags. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
No question. And, I hope he proves me wrong. Like, I wish him all the success in the NFL. Early to mid first round is probably where he's going to go. We talked about the Cowboys as a team that's possibly in the market. I look at the Cardinals, the Chargers, who, with Brandon Staley, had Jalen Ramsey with the Rams. So, you're looking for another long physical cornerback. That's Jaycee Horn. I think it was before the podcast, we were talking a little bit about the Panthers too, as a possible fit. So, there's definitely some teams that are going to be in the mix to possibly take him off the board early in the first round.
Yeah. And look, at 6'1", 205 with 33-inch arms and 9-inch hands, I think this is a guy where if a team, I'm not saying he's going to become Stephon Gilmore or anything, and that's sort of the lazy South Carolina comparison, I guess. But, he has a dad who was a big physical receiver at the NFL level. And so that he has the bloodlines going there. I would not find it difficult to look at Jaycee Horn and say, if we can coach this guy up, we could end up having a really special cornerback on our hands. And man, I got to tell you, 3-1 now, he's risen up. Patrick Surtain, we'll talk about him in a second. Caleb Farley as well, and Greg Newsome. Ooh, Greg Newsome at 25-1 is interesting too. Jaycee, for those not watching, we're looking at William Hill on our YouTube feed, youtube.com/pick6. William Hill, the odds for first cornerback drafted, -325. Patrick Surtain. I don't think that's bettable. Jaycee Horn at 3-1 is fine if you want to bet that. I have no problem with that. I think it's a good number. Caleb Farley 6-1, Eric Stokes 25-1, Greg Newsome 25-1 as well. I would have a hard time imagining anybody else on that list leapfrogging all of these guys. But do you see some value in Jaycee Horn at 3-1?
Yeah, I mean, if you get him to trust his eyes and his technique, his coaching, all of that stuff, you're talking about a potential all-pro cornerback. So I'm comfortable with him possibly being the first cornerback off the board. I like Surtain a little bit more because he's more clean as a prospect to me. But Jaycee Horn, I mean, he's got all of the talent to really entice teams to take him early. So if I were looking at value, it would certainly be Jaycee Horn at plus 300.
Just kind of glancing very quickly back through, is there this is going to sound stupid, I think, but yeah, maybe this is probably stupid. Yeah, I'm not going to say it. I was going to suggest, is it possible that yeah, it's gonna be stupid. I'm not gonna mention it.
No, you gotta say it now. You've already started twice. You gotta say it now.
Well, all of these Alabama defensive backs are just presumed to be great at the NFL level. I guess between Marlon, there's too many that have been played well in recent years to really count it. With Landon Collins, Marlon Humphrey, Eddie Jackson, Minkah Fitzpatrick. I'm just wondering if there's a ton of great cornerbacks from Alabama that have made the leap. And I feel like maybe there's not. Humphrey, again, made a Pro Bowl, so we'll give him that. Are there a bunch of great cornerbacks from Nick Saban's program that have emerged at the NFL level? Trevon Diggs, too early to tell.
Yeah, that brings me back to D. Milner, who I thought was going to be a stud.
That's where I was going in my head.
And was proven wrong on that. So, it's a dangerous game, but I understand the thought process.
There's not. Like Kareem Jackson, golly, there's just not a ton of them who end up getting drafted and do really well. Kind of an interesting phenomenon, honestly. Just food for thought as we get to Patrick Surtain at minus 325. But before we get there, Trevon Moehrig of TCU.
Nicely done. Yeah, I thought that was going to give you some trouble, but nailed it.
I did too, honestly, as I was saying it.
Well-rounded safety with great size at 6'2", 202. Significant ball production, showed that he's a competitor by competing at his pro day when he was less than 100% healthy. I look at him as a late round 1, early round 2 type of player. And I see the Bears, the Jaguars, and the Ravens as possible fits for Moehrig.
Okay. I want to tell you all about CBS Sports HQ this week and next week. It's going to be your home for the NFL draft. As always, CBS Sports HQ is your home to start your sports news day with live updates kicking off each morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. And HQ is always your home out of the evening's action with live picks from the best analysts and cappers in the sports world each day starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. As we get closer to the draft, you are going to want to leave HQ on all day because no one brings you over-the-top breaking news like CBS Sports HQ. If a draft prospect, if something's rumored to be happening, they're sounding the sirens and putting up the red banner, baby, and you're going to want it because that's actionable gambling advice for draft props. So make sure and leave HQ on all day for the latest NFL news, rumors, and mock drafts ahead of round 1 on April 29th. Think of HQ as your ultimate NFL draft war room. Check out HQ on your computer, CBSSports.com, or via the CBS Sports app on your mobile phone or TV. It's always free. It's always on CBS Sports HQ. All right, your number 3 cornerback. I can't believe Jaycee Horner's 5th on this list. Greg Newsome II out of Northwestern.
High football IQ, accountable when he's on the field. Unfortunately, he has averaged over 4 games lost over the past 3 seasons, but he's a baller when he's on the field. A guy that is going to be accountable. He's going to be a leader in the locker room. So you're bringing in not only a quality player, but a quality addition to your locker room as well. So, as some of these younger teams try to establish culture in the locker room, Newsome is a guy that you feel comfortable bringing in. I look at him as a mid to late round 1 type of player and consider the Jets. The Titans, obviously, with Mike Vrabel, kind of valuing that high football IQ and more physical style of play. And then the Browns as possible teams of fit.
I'll tell you who I wouldn't sleep on for to land Greg Newsome. The Patriots.
Yeah, I could see it.
I'm thinking that Pat Fitzgerald and Northwestern are going to be Bill Belichick's new Rutgers, is what I'm thinking. Like disciplined coach who, he knows he's going to send a finished leadership-filled product to the NFL level. And I don't know he's going to take him there. Just food for thought that it's a possibility.
I don't think Rutgers is going anywhere either, though. Now that Greg Schiano is back there, so he might have 2 filter programs coming.
Bill Belichick can begin his Rutgers love affair anew with Greg Schiano back there. I mean, do you think have we talked about this? I mentioned this to Wilson and maybe it's somebody else, and I can't remember if it was you or maybe Trapasso, but I sort of think there's a chance that now that Pat Fitzgerald has started, he's sending first round prospects into the NFL draft for like Rashawn Slater, Greg Newsome. They have one more who's on the fringe, I believe. I just sort of think I think teams might gravitate towards guys coming out of a disciplined program from a coach that the NFL is infatuated with for obvious reasons, I guess. and especially in a year where, we talk about you can't get medicals. It's not as easy to scout guys. I feel like teams might lean on, okay, like the floor feels a little bit higher for this guy who's developed really well as a prospect. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, as I think you're trying to separate maybe guys that are clustered for you a little bit.
A tiebreaker situation. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, in that situation, you kind of lean on maybe the idea that some of these guys were coached up a little bit better than they would have been at other programs, which obviously is going to lead to an immediate impact. We've seen similar thoughts in the past with Iowa and Alabama and some other programs.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Add Northwestern to the pile, no question.
Okay. Caleb Farley mentioned medicals being an issue. Obviously, Caleb Farley, some back situations out of Virginia Tech, maybe the number 1 overall corner if he was 100% healthy.
Yeah, he's a long player. He's got great ball skills, which, length seems to be a very common factor among this list. Had 6 interceptions over the past 2 seasons, but like you mentioned, the back injuries are a concern. I think he's had surgery twice now, if I remember correctly. So, in a year where teams are not able to get their hands on him, and kind of go over his medicals a little bit more than they would have in previous years, I think that has to be taken into consideration. So I think that's probably why you see such a wide array of opinions on where he's going to be taken. I could see him possibly going in round 2. I could see, a team like the Titans, who took a chance on Jeffrey Simmons in the first round, possibly be a team that takes a chance on Caleb Farley in the first round. They have a need at the cornerback position. I also look at the Cardinals, the Jets. I mean, there's a number of teams, the Bills, the Browns. I mean, a number of teams that could capitalize on possibly getting a top 10 kind of player there late round 1, early round 2, depending on how comfortable they are with his medical situation.
You said the Titans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting because they recently had great success with Jeffrey Simmons, who tore his ACL in the draft process. Now that's a whole different ball game than a cornerback who had a back procedure, but it's still the same thing. If you view Caleb Farley as the best corner in this draft, and I'm sure there are people who just look at the film and do that, and you're willing to take a gamble on a medical issue, then yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense that he would go in the first round, which brings me to my question as we sort of transition to Patrick Surtain. William Hill has the total of 4.5 cornerbacks drafted in round 1. Under is minus 135, over 105. Would you lean towards 4 or 5+ cornerbacks being drafted in the first round? We can leave out that first draft. Surtain and Horn are going to the first round, right? That feels like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I guess Farley, I don't think you can definitely say he's going to the first round just because we don't know the medicals and teams might have a better idea. We'll see. Newsome feels like a lock to go in the first round.
I would agree with all that. I think you're looking at 3 for sure. And then if you feel confident that Caleb Farley and a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. could possibly slip into the first round as well, I think that's kind of your path for hitting that ticket in the first round.
I think if you want to go over, I think you're getting 3 in Surtain, Horn, and Newsome.
Yeah. I'm
not sure. Is Stokes at 25-1? That feels like a weird number there, but that's fine. I think those 3 are definitely going to the first round. There's a pretty good chance that Asante Samuel sneaks into the first round. I like his under is like 41.5. I think that's a pretty good number. I would suspect he goes earlier than that. And then it just comes down to, will Caleb Farley, so you need Farley and Samuel to sneak into the first round to go over to 5.
Yeah, so I would be inclined to lean towards the no.
Yeah,
I did have someone with the team tell me that I probably need to go back and look at Eric Stokes again because I'm a little lower on him. I think I have him on day 2, but there definitely are some Stokes supporters in the league. So I don't know if that leads him to being a first round pick, but a guy that has tremendous speed down the boundary. I question, his transition to the field, but obviously, like I said, he's got his supporters in the league, so I wouldn't rule that out. It does seem a little fishy to me that he's even with Greg Newsome, but to see him at least in the top 6 isn't surprising.
I wouldn't read too much into the odds on these guys, because a lot of it is reacting to mock drafts and rumors. Are, it's not like they're plugged into teams necessarily when we talk about these betting sites. But I think that's a good point. And look, you should stand by your evaluation. Don't go back and look at it again if you feel like watching more cornerback tape. If Georgia games, which oh man, might call it a day at this point and just stand by my evaluation if I was you.
I'm completely done now. I did my top 450 and I submitted that on Sunday.
Like, no more tape.
I was wiping I did end up moving him up a little bit, but probably not to the liking of the person that told me this. But yeah, I've kind of wiped my hands clean on the rankings in this class.
It's sort of like fantasy football where you really don't have any business completely adjusting your rankings or your thought. Like whatever you think in July is probably what you should be thinking in August, outside of major injuries. I mean, the more you go down a rabbit hole of trying to get cute with your rankings, or a mock draft, like the mock draft my mock draft that comes out, when I put them out the day after the draft, or used to, it was always more accurate than the mock draft that I put out right before the draft started. At any rate, Patrick Surtain, your number one defensive back, Josh. And I think pretty clearly the number one defensive back on everybody's board, right?
I honestly think there might be some people that have Jaycee Horn over Patrick Surtain. I personally don't. I feel more comfortable with what I know. I like to call Patrick Surtain a smooth criminal because of the smooth way that he plays the game. I mean, he's really technically sound. Obviously, we just had the discussion of Alabama cornerbacks, but would be coached up pretty well by Nick Saban, who has a decent background coaching the position. Tested well at his pro day, more explosive, faster than maybe what we saw on tape. Father played 11 seasons with the Dolphins and the Chiefs. Obviously, that's Patrick Surtain, I guess the first. But just a really clean player. I mean, I love everything about Patrick Surtain. He's a top 10 player for me. A guy that I think is going to have a pretty seamless transition to the NFL. So you look at the Panthers, the Cowboys, the Eagles, Debo's Eagles as a possible fit there in the top half of the first round.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to mock draft database or whatever is it mock draft database? NFL mockdraftdatabase.com. You can look if you can filter by players. You can filter by Patrick Surtain. It's just 10 Cowboys, 10 Cowboys, 10 Cowboys, 10 Cowboys. It almost makes too much sense. They have drafted 2 cornerbacks in recent years, Byron Jones and Mo Claiborne. I don't think it's a lock that they take him there. I think they could go in a different direction, but that sure does feel like either 9 or 10. And I think it's possible the Panthers go Surtain too. If for some reason, and this would also blow up my evening, but if the Bengals go Penei Sewell at 5 and the Lions go Rashawn Slater at 7, it would not shock me if the Panthers decided to either go with a wide receiver or perhaps more likely the first cornerback off the board. That is a need for them. I could see them doing it. So I don't think that would be a crazy situation where Surtain goes 8 to the Panthers. Feels like the Cowboys are a good bet to take him at 10, but he could fall to 12 pretty easily.
Yeah, you have the scenario there where, the Falcons take Pitts at 4, the Bengals take Sewell at 5, the Dolphins take Chase at 6, the Lions take Waddle or Devontae Smith at 7, and then you really are looking at a situation where the Panthers either have the third wide receiver off the board, Rashawn Slater, or a cornerback like Patrick Surtain.
Or Darisaw out of Virginia Tech, which is fine, but it feels like, Matt Rule swears he's going to take the best player available. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm still inclined to think after trading for Sam Darnold, who is notably has been notably deficient in terms of supporting cast around him in New York. I am prone to think that they're probably going to go offense there in the first round and give him, some help where he didn't get that in New York, because I think at this point, the eternal optimist, the people making these trades have to bet on themselves, and they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that Sam Darnold succeeds, because they did give up a lot of draft capital. They're essentially saying, hey, we know what the past looks like. We know how he has struggled. We're going to fix that. So trying to be the smartest person in the room, so to speak, Carolina's probably going to go out, get him an offensive player, whether that's a wide receiver. Penei Sewell would be fantastic. That's an ideal situation.
Sure.
But, to fall back on another wide receiver or another wide receiver, Kyle Pitts probably won't be there, but one of those guys I think is probably the direction that Carolina will go. And then as far as Surtain will fall, I don't think he'll get past the Eagles because just based on the way things played out before the Eagles pick, they're probably in a position where Surtain is one of the best players available on their board, and they would be inclined to take him if they did not trade down.
Indeed. And I think Debo, would you be fine with that, Surtain?
Yeah, that's one of the ones on my list where they draft him. I'm cool with Jaycee Horn. I think the guys at this point that I would not be cool with.
So what you don't want is the Eagles to pass on Patrick Surtain for Kadarius Toney.
Right. I think Tony's no disrespect to his game, but that's the name that keeps it. I don't want the definitive fourth wide receiver in this class. They got probably the 10th best wide receiver and they selected him fourth in last year's class. So let's not go down that road again. Get one of the top three wide receivers or target Slater or Surtain or Horn or something.
I think what the Eagles really need is Jeff Lurie to grind on some more film and get that pick in. Get his big board together. He needs to be just film dogging it and put that big board together, however it looks. Maybe your number one player on your big board is David Mills, and you just need another corner. You're a quarterback factory.
I will say, Cody Benjamin wrote a profile of Trey Lance today, and if Trey Lance drops to 12, I'm still in. I said that back, the beginning of March after Carson Wentz got traded. Still in on Lance. I'll throw that out there.
So have you still not read the Athletic profile yet?
No, as Ryan Wilson highlighted on HQ, I'm in a good headspace with my fandom right now. I know that'll distract me. It'll bring me down. So I'm avoiding it for the time being.
Ryan Wilson. I'm not sure I've ever heard of Ryan Wilson.
I'm just stopping by to say
I can't even hear what I'm playing, so I have no idea how long that went or if that even sounded good, but I like playing that.
That was the long version.
Yeah, I know. I like it because it's got the background music. When you're like, who's Ryan Wilson? By the way, I think this is funny. So as we get out of here, we were mentioning the Carolina Panthers today. Adam Schefter just tweeted, Carolina Panthers have had conversations with other teams about potentially trading back in the draft from pick number 8 per source. He also notes there are all sorts of ongoing trade conversations between teams. Let's see what next week brings. I don't blame him for tweeting that out. I don't know if it came from the Panthers. I don't know if it came from a team that, got a call from the Panthers about trading back. Even the Giants are, rap sheet is tweeting that Dave Gettleman's talking about trading back. No, he's not. He's telling people that he's thinking about trading back so that the ownership doesn't figure out that he won't trade his pick. He's not moving anywhere. Of course, these teams are calling everybody. The Patriots, Washington, Denver, anybody that's in the quarterback market is calling everybody in front of them and saying, hey, are you interested in moving back if a quarterback drops? If a certain player drops, they're like, yeah, absolutely. Give us a call. Here's what we're looking at. Of course, everybody was willing to trade back. We don't need these. We're a week and 2 days out. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, every team has those pre-draft conversations, saying, hey, what's it going to take for us to move up if in the moment we decide to do that, the player that we want is there, you're comfortable moving back. What's it going to take for us to get up there? Because at this point, we've now gotten reports that the Falcons, the Dolphins, I think the Lions maybe were in there, the Panthers, the Giants,
the Eagles.
They're all interested in trading back. The Eagles are apparently interested in trading up, as are the Cowboys. It's a shell game at this point.
Insert NFL team is interested in trading insert direction here on Thursday night, depending on what's available. Of course, every team is willing to trade up or back, except the Bengals. The Bengals are the only team. The Bengals won't trade. Even Dave Gettleman's playing the shell game, Josh, where he's floating out there. The Giants are willing to trade. No, you're not, Dave. You're not moving you're not trading. You're sitting at 11 and you're taking an offense. You're taking You're taking Patrick Surtain. You're taking Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, or Rashawn Slater, or Christian Darrisaw. That's how it's going to go. Stop it. Or Elijah Vera Tucker. I mean, there's some options, but just stop it, Dave. Anyway, anything else to add on the defensive backs before we get out of here?
Some of the ones that I love, other than the ones that we listed, Paulson Adebo from Stanford, a guy that opted out this past season. I think he's kind of flown under the radar. Oregon safety Javon Holland, he's kind of flown under the radar. Those would be a couple of guys that I like beyond the list that we discussed today.
All right. Good stuff as always, Josh. Thanks for knocking out back-to-back podcasts. Very few people are forced to sit and talk to me for an hour and 15 minutes. My wife did it voluntarily. Debo wants his paycheck, and Ryan Wilson's a psycho. So I appreciate you. Appreciate your time as always. You do a great job. Make sure and follow. Is it J. Edward CBS on Twitter?
Just Edward CBS now.
Edward CBS on Twitter.
Yep.
I like it. That's fine. Perfectly. That's a good move. I like that. Follow Josh. Make sure and read him and all over the place on cbssports.com. Thanks, buddy.